So this will be our recap of the lymphatic and immune systems. We're going to teach them together in this unit. So let's see how they actually relate. So it starts off here, right? So this is going to be a, let's find a nice color here, okay. So here is blood flowing through an arteriole, right? And as it branches off this arterioles become smaller and smaller and smaller until they actually reach the capillaries. And what happens to the capillaries, remember this is simple squamous epithelium all along the edges here, so it leaks. And that's what all those arrows are showing you, is the leaking, okay? And that's important because this cell right here will now get bathed in the plasma from that blood. And that plasma has glucose and amino acids in it. It's got everything this cell needs to survive. So it essentially gets bathed in nutrient-rich stuff, so it just diffuses stuff in and out. And then some of that will leak back into the capillaries. So some of that leaks right back into the capillaries and then goes into a vein and starts going back to the heart. But not all of it goes in there. Some of it gets collected by the lymphatic system and goes into these tubes. Okay? So the main job of the lymphatic system was to collect all the fluid that leaks out of the tissues, prevent the tissues from kind of swelling and swelling and swelling and swelling and swelling. Once it collects that fluid, it's going to start sending it back towards the heart. Essentially, they're going to dump them right back into the subclavian veins, which come from each arm. So we want to send that back to the heart. And along the way, for the most part, it's going to be moved by muscle contraction in these lymphatic vessels. So here's a lymphatic vessel down here. And you'll notice inside of it, see this right here is a valve. Okay. So if you were to squeeze right here and here, then the lymph wouldn't be able to go backwards because there'd be another valve over here. So imagine I got a valve shut right here. Right? So the fluid can't go this way, so it has to get pumped up in this direction. So the fluid goes up here, gets trapped by this valve, that valve will close up, and it keeps moving towards the heart. So every time you take a step, you actually squeeze some of this fluid back towards the heart. Okay? Not a lot of pressure in there. It's muscle contraction that really moves it along. This diagram just shows you where things drain back into. So everything over on this half drains into the right subclavian vein, and everything else, the other 3/4 of the body, go into the left subclavian vein. And we can see that here. Everything is kind of like the real blue is the veins, okay, and then that kind of teal color in the back, those are the lymphatic ducts, okay. So everything's coming in here, right, coming into this subclavian vein, and then on this side going into the left subclavian vein, and both of those then flow right back into the heart. So that's how we return the fluid back to where it was. It leaked out of the bloodstream, we return it back in this way. Now the other job of the lymphatic system is to make sure that it's the lymph is clean, it's free of infection before we send it back. So as the fluid is making its way back towards the heart, going in this direction, right, so coming in, okay, it's going to pass through a series of lymph nodes before it gets back to the heart. And the lymph nodes are packed with T cells and B cells, and all sorts of immune cells that are actually looking for infection in here, okay? We'll talk more about T cells and B cells, I'm sure we already talked about it in the class, but that's what we're looking at. So in here, if there was a little bacteria that got sucked up in our skin, so let's go back to our first drawing, okay? So let's say in here, this was a little bacteria. There's some sort of infection there. That bacteria might get swept up in here and along the way, pass in here, and when it gets into this lymph node, the T cells, the B cells, all the immune cells in there should recognize and destroy it so we don't send the infection back to the heart. We don't want it to go back there, right? If we dump it into the bloodstream now, you've got that bacteria flowing around to the entire body. So the lymph node is supposed to clean that stuff out. And this is why we teach the lymphatic system and the immune system together, is because they're linked. There's a lot of connections there, right? So let's focus on the immune system. So the immune system has two big categories. We talked about the specific and non-specific responses, okay? So the non-specific responses are things like this, where we've got barriers, like our skin that prevents things from getting inside, our nose hairs, things like that. You've got the phagocytes, which are just your general white blood cells floating around, swallowing up anything that looks weird, okay? You've got a bunch of chemicals, like interferons is one of them. We've got some stuff called complement. We can get inflammation. We can get fevers. All of those things are non-specific defenses. They don't care what kind of bacteria or virus is inside of us. They're there to just generally help the immune system, so non-specific, right? What we want to focus on is the specific immune system. That's the part that's far more interesting, right? So let's take a peek at this picture. So first thing, what this is trying to show is a cell that's become infected, okay? So, this is a white blood cell. I pulled up the wrong slide here. So this is a white blood cell that's actually found in infection. So this is a phagocytic antigen-presenting cell. So this is our white blood cell, and it found this bacteria, swallows it up, and what it does then is it rips off a little piece of the antigen. See how it breaks it down here, and then goes out here, and puts this on the outside. And what this is now is referred to as an antigen-presenting cell. And remember that this macrophage is what starts the whole process. At this point, we're going to go around, we're going to look for a helper T cell. A helper T cell that can recognize this specific little antigen here. We've got to recognize that little tiny antigen. If we can recognize the antigen, then we can trigger the killer T cells and the B cells to fight it off for us. All right, so we've now got a macrophage. I'm going to do a lot of abbreviation here, guys, because it's kind of hard to write here, okay? So we've got a macrophage that is walking around with a little chunk of antigen on the outside. So here's our little chunk of antigen on the outside, okay? What it's going to look for, okay, that macrophage is now going to go and look for, our helper T cell, our helper T, okay? Actually, it's usually, it's usually written this way. T with an H, okay? So a helper T cell, okay? And the helper T cell is kind of the intermediary. If we find that helper T cell that's going to multiply, it's going to divide, go through a whole lot of mitosis, and then the helper T cell is going to go out, and it is going to look for the killer T cells, or the cytotoxic T cells, okay? But the killer T cells are the ones that are going to actually do all the work here, okay? Now, these killer T cells are specialists in the fact that they can find body cells that are infected with this little piece. So they've been shown this little antigen, and they're now looking for specifically for that little antigen, that little marker on the outside. So if you've got like a body cell down here, so let's draw like, let's draw a layer of simple cuboidal cells here, right? Right? If one of these were infected with this little antigen on the outside, would have helped if I hadn't drawn them in green, right? This killer T cell would be able to just come right along. It would check these guys out. Oh, you're okay. You're all right. You're all right. You're all right. Well, it would recognize this, and what it would do is it actually can release chemicals. It will essentially destroy this cell. Okay, and there's a bunch of different ways it actually does it. But it'll destroy off that cell. So that's what the killer T cells do. They actually look for cells that are already infected. All right. So it starts at the macrophage, finds the antigen, becomes the antigen-presenting cell, finds the helper T cell. That helper T cell goes and finds the killer T cells. They multiply and go looking for cells that are already infected. All right? The other part of the response deals with the B cells. Okay? And it starts off the same way. You still have the macrophage. Okay? So you have a macrophage. It goes and finds the helper T cell. But the helper T cell now goes and finds the B cell, okay? And once it's activated, okay, once the B cell becomes activated, which is what you're seeing here, you've got an inactive B cell, okay? Now it's presented with the antigens, okay? Now it's sensitized, it binds to this helper T cell, we get this whole process here, and what it does is they become plasma cells. They divide, become plasma cells. So these plasma cells are the actual part that does the work. And what they do is they produce the antibodies. Okay? Now, an antibody can't do anything to a virus or bacteria that's inside of a cell. But if we go back a page, let's say over here we had a cell that we hadn't noticed was infected, and all of a sudden it burst forth. And we've got, here's a bacteria, another bacteria, another bacteria, another bacteria, and they're all on their way over here to infect this cell. Okay? What the antibodies can do, the antibodies will come in, and they're little Y-shaped missiles, and what they do is they match up with this, and they stick together and they paralyze it. So now that bacteria can't get in there, and another one can match up here and paralyze that one, another one will match up here, and essentially they, in that way, they essentially prevent this cell from getting infected. Right? So if you look at those two processes, the killer T cells, right here, find the cells that are already infected, take care of this, and then the B cells produce the antibodies that take care of anything that's outside of the cells. So between those two things, there's nowhere for an infection to hide. It's either inside of a cell or outside of a cell, and we can get it both ways, either the killer T cells or the B cells. So hopefully that helps, guys. If you have any questions, come see me. Have a good day.